NutriCast.
Coffee for us is a catalyst for conversation. It is, how many times in the day do in an office setting, someone says, can I get you a cup of coffee? Or I need a break, I gotta get a cup of coffee. So there are all these wonderful moments in our day. From getting started in the morning, you might start with some, or getting over the hump after you had a lunch, or in the evening where you're trying to make a deadline, you need a cup to get through it. Or maybe it's a Sunday brunch with your family. So yes, I like to say I'm a coffee salesman, but what I really am is a steward for this bean that can truly be transformative in the way it creates culture at your home, in your office, throughout your day.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Hey everyone, I've got an amazing guest for you today. You know those people who say they're just something modest, but it turns out to be extraordinary? That's my guest, Robert Bush Jr. He'll tell you he's just a coffee salesman, but this guy helped structure the largest leveraged buyout in history before teaming up with NBA legend Dikembe Mutombo. Together, they set out to change the coffee industry from the inside out. Their goal? Create a business that actually helps the farmers in Africa and Latin America who grow our morning brew. What's fascinating is they launched right before COVID hit and later faced the heartbreaking loss of Dikembe to cancer. Talk about challenges that would break most businesses. But Robert's journey shows us what's possible when you build a business with purpose at its core. I can't wait for you to hear how Robert connects his years in global finance with creating positive impact through something as simple as coffee. He's got insights that change how you think about resilience, purpose, and turning obstacles into opportunities. So hey, grab your favorite drink, coffee recommended, of course, and join me for this conversation with Robert Bush Jr. Hey, Bob, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How is it going today?
Thank you, Tyler, for having me. It's going great. I am looking out the window here. Beautiful sunny day. I'm in Central Florida, so I can't wait for the weekend. Not because I'm actually going to enjoy it, but that's when the phone stops ringing and I can get some internal stuff done.
That's important. And I am a little jealous. I'm normally in sunny California, Northern California, which I am here, but it's been far from sunny. It feels like the whole year. It's another week of rain and wind. And so I'm envious of where you're at right now.
Right.
Hey, I'd love to start out the show just learning a little bit about you. First, I'd love to learn what you do professionally. And then the second thing that I'd love to learn is if you have a personal tidbit, maybe people don't know about you that you could share would be awesome.
Sure. Well, I'm a coffee salesman, but we're a coffee salesman with a cause. And before becoming a coffee salesman, I had about 35 years of other stuff I was doing. So I hope I end up being a pretty good coffee salesman because I draw from the world of law. I was a lawyer and investment banking and finance. So I'm bringing all of those different skills and perspectives to hopefully move the dial on providing great coffee experiences and coffee events and coffee talks to our customers here and partners here in the United States. But it links back to the cause. The reason why I'm a coffee salesman is because about 5 years ago, my partner, Dikembe Mutombo, who some may remember as Mr. No, not in my house.
The finger wag.
The finger wag. So we decided we were going to finger wag some coffee companies and come up with a better model that can really have the impact, the social impact that we want with our African and Latin American farmers. And so I'd like to joke, of course, that I'm just a coffee salesman, but what I really am, because coffee from us is not just the hot beverage that we may start our day with. Coffee for us is a catalyst for conversation. It is It is how many times in a day do in an office setting, someone says, can I get you a cup of coffee, or I need a break, I got to get a cup of coffee. So there are all these wonderful moments in our day, from getting started in the morning. You might start with some, or getting over the hump after you've had a lunch, or in the evening where you're trying to make a deadline, you need a cup to get through it. Or maybe it's a Sunday brunch with your family. So this humble bean of coffee is so powerful because it's so impactful in just how we lead our lives. And it's fascinating how this bean, which started in a little village in Ethiopia and Yemen, of all places, ended up becoming one of the world's leading beverages. So yes, I like to say I'm a coffee salesman, but what I really am is a steward for this bean that can truly be transformative in the way it creates culture at your home, in your office, throughout your day.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
It creates culture at your home, in your office, throughout your day.
Got it. And then how about on the personal side? Any little tidbit that you can share with us?
Yeah. I have a saying that I have to remind myself of, right? And it is, a sense of humor is like a spring on a wagon. If you don't have it, every little jolt will take you off course. And so when you're an entrepreneur, or when you're a dad, or when you're a friend, or when you're a son, if you don't have some kind of sense of humor about things, or perspective about things, you're just going to get whipsawed, whether it's me. So I try to bring that not just in my professional life about being resilient, but also in my personal life, to just try really hard to not let the typical annoying things get in the way of being able to truly either relax or enjoy your day, or moving with purpose, or moving with meaning. So a lot of the things that I've learned in trying to be successful as a human actually make me successful as a businessman.
That's a good one. I was chuckling as you said that, because you started out this whole discussion. You said to me, "Hey, I go by Bob," and you spell it the same either way. And it made me chuckle. So you kind of live it in terms of kind of lightening the load and just starting off the conversation on a nice, good note. So, hey, I want to hear about this journey of yours. How do you get to a point? You've done, I think, researching you, transactions that are exceeding like $30 billion. You've got a very deep, you said a lawyer. I know you have a finance background. How do you get to a point where you're talking with Mutombo, an incredible basketball player in his day, Mutombo, about starting a coffee business with a purpose?
Well, the good thing about having the conversation that I had with Dikembe, one, he already has the mindset of giving. And he came into the country as a teenager on a scholarship, State Department scholarship, to go to Georgetown on a academic scholarship, right? But God blessed him with height of 7'2". And he's walking around campus, and everyone just assumes he's on the team, and he's not. So he went to Georgetown because he had something much greater in mind than playing basketball. He comes from a village in the Congo, and he comes from educated parents, and parents that were concerned about their village and their country. So he was on a State Department scholarship to eventually go back to make a difference. When he and I met, he was at Georgetown. I went to a small school in New England, and my sister was in the freshman class with him. So I would, as a good son and a good brother, go to look in after my sister. But what I was really doing was getting a chance to see Dikembe and Alonzo and all of those amazing Georgetown giants back in the late 80s, early 90s, right? And so the journey for me really just comes down to your social capital, the friends that you keep, the purpose in which they move. And that often starts, obviously, what you've experienced in the home. I come from a household where my parents were servers. They worked for the government. My father was a firefighter. My mother worked for the mayor's office, etc. So I grew up in a home that already emphasized what can we do to be good citizens in our community. And then as you meet people, whether they're 7'2" or you go into business or law, whatever, that fundamental concept of leave the world better than you found it is just part of my DNA. And so as we started the journey from trying to, please my parents or being a good kid, then all these wonderful opportunities come up. And I remember, if I had to say what my first sort of entrepreneurial venture was, I was in high school, rap had just come out. I went to an all-boys school, predominantly white boys and a few brothers, right? And they were like, Bob, what are those guys saying? I'm like, I don't know. So I went home and I listened to the lyrics, I don't know, 20 times. I wrote them all down. I gave my mother the handwritten lyrics. She typed them up for me in the office. And a couple of days later, we printed them and I went to school and I sold the lyrics to Rapper's Delight to all of my cool friends at school. And it made me cool because I took the time. And what was it? It really wasn't about the money. I think I charged $1 per copy and I sold $20, $25 worth, which is, I don't know about today, but $25 in your pocket, in the mid 80s, that was good money for me, right? So it was really just, hey, here's a problem that I can solve. And listening to problems and trying to figure out how to really solve problems has really been the thread that has led me through my life. I hear an issue, I hear a challenge, I hear a problem. Can I solve it? And guess what happens? God blesses you with bigger problems to solve. And then you end up, managing a little bit here and giving some advice with a little bit of a project. My first M&A transaction was RJR Nabisco, which was the largest leveraged buyout of all time.
Wow.
And I was a philosophy major on Wall Street going, how the heck do I make this deal work as one of the analysts, the junior analysts on the deal? And I slept in the office for weeks. I was very singularly focused. I didn't want those business school kids to outshine me. I dug in and I remember completing the assignment and saying, hey, this deal doesn't work. So how is the junior analyst from the team going to tell these billion-dollar public companies that their deal doesn't work? So then I learned the real art and science of capital markets and investing and how to make the deal work. And so that skill set of really understanding balance sheets, et cetera, I owe to my initial training on the street. And I took that skill set, understanding dollars and cents. I took the mindset that my parents gave me of trying to figure out how to leave the world a better place, and my desire just to solve problems. All of that stuff came together over a bunch of years to work for some very interesting governments, some very interesting people. And so by the time Dikembe and I, about 5 years ago, launched the coffee company, I could draw on all of these things that seemed to be disparate, that didn't how is that going to fit into this? And realize that there was a fit. Realize that my studies around international trade, my understanding of capital markets, my understanding of supply demand, economics, all of that was going to be very, very helpful as we launched the business.
Got it. Wow. One of the things that really stood out to me is that all these experiences that you had that don't seem to be correlating, you've brought them together in terms of how you're applying them and what you're doing now. As you were saying the story, it was kind of clicking in my head. Like I can see this is all tying together in some way. So it's kind of a cool story. By the way, did you pay your mom a royalty or some type of fee for typing the notes? That's what I'd like to know.
So one of the things, right, is the simple answer is I did not.
Okay.
And one of the things, I now tell my kids, hey, where's daddy's cut? Right? Right. And sometimes the cut is just give me a piece. Like if you want some money to go buy some candy, make sure you leave me about 10% in my bag so I can eat it when I want. But absolutely, there is a price, right? There are inputs and there's a return expectation. So in this case, my mom was much nicer and kinder to me than I am on my own kids.
It's good. It's a learning experience, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Hey, so switching gears, taking this a little deeper. When you started Mutombo Coffee, it was actually during COVID-19. And so what I want to talk about is what were some of the unique challenges in doing that? And then how did that impact like your cash flow needs, your capital management? Now, I'm assuming, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, you probably have somewhat of deep pockets for this venture. So maybe cash flow and capital management wasn't a big deal during this time frame. But what are your thoughts around that, and where did that take you going through that during a very, what you would think, difficult time?
So the problem of how to get coffee from Africa, from farms and cooperatives in emerging markets, has been a hundreds of year old problem. So the problem that we focused on was not an easy problem in the best of times.
Got it.
Right? There's a reason why in many parts of Africa and many parts of Latin America, the farmers can barely make a living. And they certainly don't make the living that's commensurate with the value that coffee creates in the rest of the world. And so we were already on a very challenging problem to begin with, and we started with the Congo because literally thousands of pounds of coffee were dying on the vine for lack of a market. So first, it was a big problem in the best of times because, coffee in Africa. Then so you got to be careful what you wish for, because Dikembe, myself, and our other two founders, we started the business 6 months before COVID. And so now you've got the continent of Africa, and now you've got COVID. And there's one thing when everybody shuts down, right? Versus, well, we're learning, we're a startup, and we've got to figure out how to make this work. No one was getting anything done. And so be careful what you wish for, because you just don't know. And so one of the first lessons we learn about business is assume there's going to be a shock. You may not be able to predict what it is, but just assume that there's going to be a shock of some sort. So mentally be prepared for it, right? And COVID was the shock. The shock of the mother of all shocks, right?
For sure.
Not just for startups, but for very, very big companies, et cetera. And in a way, we were blessed to start the business. There's a saying, start a business in a recession. And I thought I understood that, but having lived through that, I understand the importance of that. So what was the opportunity? We just talked about the challenge. If you can't get coffee from the country because the ships aren't running, where was the opportunity? The opportunity was we started talking to roasters who had all this excess capacity because no one was in the office, no one was going to the restaurants. So when I started calling some of the largest roasters in the world saying, I want to buy some roasting capacity, they actually listened because I was the only guy calling, right? That was an opportunity to start increasing our capacity because it was excess capacity, surplus capacity in the market. That was an opportunity. And so the partnerships that we started 3-4 years ago to help us with packaging, to help us with roasting, to help us with logistics, are the same partnerships that we have 4 to 5 years later, because they actually had an opportunity for us to fit in. So there's always a silver lining there. You just have to work hard to find it.
So I love this whole thought process. And now you had to deal with, how do you get the product? Who do you work with to get it? Did that stay true to your mission? Like, were these sources that you were going to, were they originally getting the coffee from Africa? Or did you have to kind of adjust what your mission was? What did that look like?
No, that's a great question. So in between me selling Rapper's Delight to my high school friends, I had spent a lot of time working with governments. I'd worked with the European Commission. I did work for the German government. When I sat down with Dikembe in 2020 in Dubai, I was working for the Dubai government. And so I had access, and I've lived and worked in Africa and Middle East and China and India. So I had a global network of people that even if we couldn't fly in country, I could literally pick up the phone, call the ambassador, call the embassy, call people on the ground in these countries through my network and say, we still are going to do this. I can't fly there, but you're in country. What farmers should we talk to? What cooperatives should we talk to? And, this is very timely now, given the role, the things that Doge are doing with regards to cutting out programs, et cetera. But I called the USAID in country and said, we're looking to do this. We want to be helpful. What can you tell us? How do you help us with our search costs and identify the right kinds of opportunities on the ground? We're interested in coffee and cocoa. Who's export ready or who needs help, et cetera. So we went through those exercises, and I leaned on my own personal network and the apparatus of the U.S. government that's doing work in these countries. And we reached out to NGOs, et cetera, not just U.S. NGOs, but others, to really sort of get a sense of what the supply challenges were. And we did Zoom calls, and we did other ways of connecting the supply side. So the first part of the answer is it did not affect our mission at all. In fact, it heightened the reason for our mission, because now the people that we were trying to work with were even more challenged for lack of certain ways to get out. So it heightened the mission.
Wow.
As it relates to, the cash flow elements of this, again, a lesson from COVID. We didn't have the luxury of a nice ramp up. We were hit smack in the face with this COVID tsunami, to mix metaphor, right? And so we knew right out of the gate that we were going to have to be very careful with the cash management because there was no demand. No one was buying the coffee. And so it's like, let's focus on the supply through our NGOs and through our network. Let's really make sure that we're quite selective and we understand the challenges. And are we going to be able to get reliably high quality beans, with whom and for how long? So we shifted our focus to making sure that the supply that we would need, because at some point we knew, well, we didn't know. Actually, COVID tells us we don't know nothing, right?
Right.
We certainly don't know what we think everything, right? So, but the working assumption was the world is going to come back, the US is going to come back, and now let's just use the time. I like to say, do the hard work first. And so we spent a lot of time on supply related issues during that time. And from the cash flow perspective, in a way, not being able to fly, and we didn't get the frequent flyer miles, but we didn't have to run up all the international travel either, because my sourcing is in Africa, Latin America, but my demand is primarily the United States. So Zoom was a lifesaver. That's what caused Zoom to become a household name,
right?
Because the timing of that was unbelievable. So we used technology and relationships, and that actually was more cost effective than what the normal alternative would have been, right?
Yeah.
The other challenge that we had, it was cancer. My partner got cancer 2 years into our journey, and Dikembe passed almost 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So between dealing with the continent of Africa, dealing with COVID, dealing with making sure that we had to mind our cash flow because the demand wasn't there, and then dealing with cancer, we are built for endurance and grit and resilience, because that was the only way we were going to get through to where we are.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
We are built for endurance and grit and resilience, because that was the only way we were going to get through to where we are.
Gosh, I love that. You know, one thing I want to go back to, you kind of started this, the answer to this question is, they say to start a business during a recession. And you kind of tied this all together in that you built all this infrastructure during a very tough time. Zoom allowed you the opportunity not to do as much traveling, but it's kind of like it answered the question of, because I'm sure there's some people out in the audience go, why would you ever start a business in a recession? You kind of answered it to some degree in the sense that you went out and built all this infrastructure. You were able to get things done while the world wasn't really moving at its highest level. And then probably, oh, by the way, once we come out of COVID, you're now positioned to be able to serve your market at a lot higher level. Am I paraphrasing that right? And do you agree with what I just said?
I think so. I would say you got to sharpen your blade. It forces you to sharpen your blade. When you don't have surplus, you get creative. One of the things I love that just came out in the last few weeks was DeepSeek that came out of China with scarcity. They didn't have access to tons of, billions or hundreds of billions of dollars and the latest chips, and they came up with something out of scarcity. Innovators can take, I don't know, I can tell you in my house, my mom would make dinner and I'm like, there's no food in the house. And then there we are eating. How did that happen? Right. And so whether it's a recession or whether or not in the best of times. So in the best of times, everybody's running because everybody's got a lot and everybody's eager to enter something. But I kind of like recessions because now we get to see who's really built for this.
Yeah.
Really built for this mission or not. And unfortunately, it takes out a lot of people, but those that are prepared for the hills and the travails of building a business, it is tough for sure. I wouldn't wish to have to run through a desert if I had a choice. But guess what? The guy running in the desert is often the guy or the team, often running alone. Right. So, hey, right? So the sharpen the blade is one. There's often less competition, two, and it just really causes you to really know and focus on your why. Is your why important enough to go through these challenges? And you expect, like any marathon, I like to say, business is not a marathon, it's a marathon of sprints, right?
Yeah.
And so you just start to fashion your business model. You start to think differently. You start to recognize what is truly critical and what is not. And now, should you have to do that in the recession? No, you could. Those are just best practices. But if you don't do that during a recession, the penalty is so great, you won't survive.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So what is it like today, the organization? What are your biggest challenges? Is it still a supply? Do you still have supply constraints? Is it more from a consumer market adaptation standpoint? Like, what do you consider your biggest challenges today in terms of growing and scaling the organization?
Well, we'll touch upon the supply side challenges. So coffee is at a 50-year high.
Yeah.
Right? The prices of coffee, well, the commodity spiked 60+% last year. So pricing is a challenge for everybody in the industry. And because of our size and because of a little bit of luck and a little bit of planning, we have enough coffee that will get us through the year. We've got great supplier relationships, great roasting relationships. So we're fine for this year. Now, I don't know what next year is going to look like when we can't pull from inventory, right?
Yeah.
But that's a real issue. Those inputs, those supply side challenges, and now we've got tariffs, right?
Yeah.
So there's supply side challenges for sure. But for now, I think we're fine. Now, how do we deal with that? Maybe we don't do as much single origin. Maybe we do a little bit more blends. Maybe, you've heard of the term shrinkflation. Maybe we don't put it in 16-ounce bags. Maybe we use 12-ounce bags. So there are levers and things you can do to still get your product out and adjust for different prices and different inputs, of course, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good feedback. Now, do you, from a scalability standpoint, is there like certain constraints that, man, this is the biggest we'll get just because of the supply challenges? Or, I mean, how do you kind of think about it in terms of the future of the growth of the business?
Yeah. So what, 2 billion cups of coffee are drunk a day? That's a lot of cups. I think it's a pretty big market.
Got it.
And I think that there is no reason why we can't scale. Now, what does it take to scale? What are the conditions for scale? There are a couple of things that just have to be there. And because I've worked for big organizations and governments, and I think in more of a systems way. We think about where we want to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then we work backwards. So day one, because we're involved in international trade, processes, systems, controls, all had to be baked in just to start the engine. And we've always thought about this with regards to scale, because we recognize when we talk to local roasters or local coffee shops, small businesses, the challenges they have, right? The challenges to scale often are access to capital. The challenges to scale are access to, diverse suppliers. The challenges to scale are, can you hold your employees, right? The challenge, all of these things. So it's good being old. I had a birthday. I turned 59 a few weeks ago.
Wow. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Having all of these experiences to bring to it. So at least we're going to make mistakes in the business and the market's going to be challenging, but we try not to make the obvious mistakes, the rookie mistakes, because there are things that work and that things that typically don't work. And so we've been very blessed to have seasoned people that are working directly in the business. I've got a really wonderful world-class board that comes from military, that comes from CPG, that comes from industry, that we talk to, that give us different insights and perspectives on. So yeah, our mission is to be the most socially impactful coffee company on the planet. And to do that on the planet means you've got to have in your DNA the ability to scale. And so I probably spent 30% of my time on what I consider scalability concerns, right? So.
Wow. That's a pretty big allotment of time. I wanted to talk about just the name of the business and just the whole celebrity aspect. And how do you, obviously there's name recognition there, but what considerations did you give from a sustainability standpoint? Because sometimes when you think of celebrities, it's great, they got the name recognition, but were there some sustainability issues that you thought about as it related to the name, or some things that you put into place that offset just the celebrity side of it?
No, it's a very good question. And we thought a lot about it. So firstly, when you put the name of a living human being or any person on anything, is something going to come up 10 years? That's something that popped up that they did 10 years before, 20 years before. The thing about having met this man as teenagers and having 30 plus years of watching as a fan, as, casually, as a friend, I didn't have any issues about his reputation, right? He was a global ambassador to the NBA. He had, as a brand ambassador to some of the biggest companies in the world. He has a loving family. He has beautiful, smart kids. So one of the first things is reputational risk. I actually talked to friends of mine in Africa and said, if I were going to name a coffee company, whose name should I put on? Should it be Mandela Coffee Company? Should it be Mutombo Coffee Company? Right? Who could it be? And so we knew the reputation, et cetera, here and then internationally. And it all came up. What a great guy, 30 plus years of authenticity, really is walking the walk, really walking the talk, I should say. So that was one risk that we knew that we wouldn't have to deal with. Now, the risk that we didn't, but again, from the top of the call, I said, always assume there's going to be a shock of some sort. I'm only 3 months older than Dikembe, and none of us predicted that he would pass before his 59th birthday. No one would predict that. But as I said at the top of the call, we've got to build this business around redundancy and resiliency. You just assume something's going to happen. And you don't know what it is because none of us can see the future. But my goodness, we did not predict that. But we had 2 years of him being active in the business, giving his name, giving his image, giving his likeness, giving his charm, giving his finger wag, right, to draw from. And so we were blessed that while he was healthy, we shared an office. I worked out of Atlanta a lot, that we were really able to create a business and a brand, not just have it associated with the man, because this was not supposed to be about vanity. This was really supposed to be about the mission. And you don't sustain the mission if you're relying on individuals. You sustain the mission from the goodwill and the promises that you make as a brand. And so we didn't predict that, but we had enough interaction where we really got the brand going. And so fortunately, when he wasn't able to do those things anymore, we were able to rely on our, going back to your scalability question, our infrastructure, our systems, our team, our business model. And so no one wants to see me when I say, Bob, can you come and give a talk at such and such? They want to see the big guy. And so I also had to change my role a little bit. I was happy for him to have the name and the face. I just wanted to make sure that the trains ran on time. So he was passion and I was purpose. What a great combination. But I had to adjust some of my purpose to the passion because people want to hear the stories. People want to have a face that they recognize as part of it. And that's, I'll never be able to replace Dikembe in that regard. He was bigger than life, but we have adjusted because the brand is supporting it. Our customers are supporting it. We're still winning B2B business. And this quarter, which is why we're starting to do more podcasts, we're now starting to do direct to consumer and retail because we had started the business working with corporate clients and government. And now we're starting to bring the storytelling, our mission, images of him, more public facing. And fortunately, we've got some great clips of things that he's doing and all the work that we've done so that those that remember him back when he was playing like you do,
yeah,
and those that are just becoming familiar with his work, and we can see it, right? So when I'm talking to other NBA athletes or NFL athletes of this generation, they know that there's a model and they're looking to us, our model, because they have the same thing. If you look at across the league, many more international players are coming into the United States. And they're not forgetting where they come from. They're coming from, baseball, a lot from Latin America, and basketball from Africa and Asia, et cetera. And so we are trying to set a standard about how a celebrity can turn into a person of global impact, certainly in the countries of origin or where their families come from. And so we're trying to create a model that's not only just for our mission, but the feedback that we're getting, this is the kind of model that we want to use because this person comes from Cameroon, or they may come from Brazil, or they come from China, all these other conversations that we're starting to have. And that was an unintended consequence. Going to your sustainability question, we were just trying to make ourselves financially sustainable, make sure our farmers are financially sustainable. And now it looks like we're creating a model that can be used by other athletes and celebrities themselves as to how to do it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Hey, I want to switch gears. You've talked about the triple bottom line approach. Can you tell us what that means and how does that fit in for Joe or Jane business owners? So, my typical audience, somewhere in that $1 to $20 million a year revenue. Can you tie that maybe in for them and how this could be maybe something that would fit for them too?
Yeah. So let's define our terms. When we say triple bottom line, typically we're talking about people, planet, and profit, right? And so as a cause-based social enterprise, we're thinking about the cause and how we can support at origin where we're sourcing the coffee. So that's clearly part of it. But you don't have to be in the commodity business and thinking about sourcing that way. People can also mean, and this is very important as all this artificial intelligence stuff is coming up, even if the robot can do it better, the robot is supposed to serve humanity. The customer are people, right? Having a customer-centric approach to solving a problem is the key to what is going to make AI successful. And I was in a talk yesterday about ethical AI and recognizing just what kinds of questions are we asking of AI, right? If we ask AI a stupid question, we're going to get a stupid answer. If we ask it a small problem to solve, it's going to try to solve. Can we use AI to get rid of poverty? Why not? Can it be a tool to help us with grand challenges? Why not? The analytical capacity of artificial intelligence and our ability to digest and to analyze data has never been greater in the history of man. So wouldn't it be great that these large language models are not just hoovering up our consumer spending patterns, but learning principles of economics and capitalism and democracy to help us come up with new solutions about the problems, the grand challenges that we have as people. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if we could finally end the debate of whether or not there's global warming or not by looking at historical data and looking at weather patterns and looking at factors to help us really understand what we need to do to make sure that our planet and the people can live harmoniously along with the plants and the animals and all of that? Wouldn't it be great that all of this technology and all this intellectual firepower can ask better questions using technology and tools, et cetera, right? And there is no doubt in my mind, if you can ask the right questions that put people in a better position, ask the right questions that can help make sure that we create environmentally sustainable practices, that you're not going to make a lot of money. There's just no way that the profits are going to follow if you have enough courage and confidence to ask the hard questions first, to put in the time, to use the tools to ask grand challenges. Because quite frankly, I don't need flying cars. Do we, any of us? Now, if you tell me the flying car is a way for me to move coffee or cashews or vegetables from the city to a rural environment, now that's cool. That's a great purpose. But just something else that I can gain some status from, not interested, right? Now, others not, but I'm not going to judge others that just want to make things cooler and sleeker and funner. But there isn't any reason why you can't have cooler, sleeker, funner, and purposeful, right? There isn't any reason. You really can have all of that. And clearly the sustainability bit is, what's the return on all of that? If we can figure out how to get a return to go to Mars, I am sure we can figure out how to get a return on solving the homeless issue in this country.
For sure. That's good stuff. Hey, I want to wrap up. If you've got something in you as it relates to a couple tips, I'd love to know either a life tip or an entrepreneurial tip that you could share with us. If it can be actionable, that would be awesome. Something that we could apply in our lives today. Anything come to mind?
A couple, because you mentioned you've got entrepreneurs, etc., on listening to you. Maybe think about your metaphors. By what metaphor are you living your life? Or do you live your life by going, oh, this problem is the tip of the iceberg? Is your metaphor life is a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to find? Is your metaphor a metaphor of abundance or a metaphor of scarcity, right? This is really important because you hear a lot of stuff about mindset. So I'm trying to give you something a little bit below that. What is mindset? We analogize all the time. We create metaphors for our life. Think about the metaphor that you're using as you approach a problem, or think about the metaphor that you're using as you're crafting a solution. It's going to help you frame, and it's going to have a very interesting consequence to where you end up going with your solution based on the kind of metaphor through which you see the world. Are you a war fighter, and every challenge is coming in, you got to figure out how to kick its butt? Or are you a peacekeeper and you're trying to figure out a way to create win-win situations with your suppliers, with your customers, with the media, whatever? What's your metaphor? And I think that's an interesting thought experiment that I use when I'm trying to step back to approach something. Am I approaching this from a position of strength, weakness, scarcity, abundance, fear, right? Fear is optional. Suffering is optional. Danger is real. Am I letting my view about what might happen, is that based off of data? Is that based off of reality? Or is that self-doubt, right? So I think, where's your metaphor? And really recognizing that fear is an option, suffering is a choice, danger can be real. I think if you use those two things, you asked for 3 tips, but those are 2, I think that'll take you a long way.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
I think if you use those two things, you asked for 3 tips, but those are 2, I think that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I love it. Hey, so your website, mutombocoffee.com. I'll of course put this in the thinktyler.com show notes. Now, guys, there is a discount code, thinkbusiness25. You get a 25% discount. I don't get anything of that. It's not a promotion, but I highly encourage you to check it out because it looks like good stuff. And if you like coffee like me, I think this is something you'll enjoy. So once again, it's thinkbusiness25 is the code. The link is mutombocoffee.com. I'll put the correct spelling in the link on my show notes. If people wanted to reach out to you, anywhere else you'd want them to go, or is this a spot to go?
If they want to reach out to talk about how to get our coffee into their corporations or their offices or their employee resource groups, etc., send me an email, robert@mutombocoffee.com. I have a team of people that monitor my email, robert@mutombo coffee.com. Send me a note, put what you want to do in the header. We're expanding the business. We're looking for partners. We're trying to get the coffee, the cause, the messaging out. And so, we're looking for members of the House of Mutombo.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for being on the show. I hope to talk with you again, maybe in the next year or so, next milestone or whatever you got going on. I think that'd be a great chat.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me, Tyler.
Thank you, Bob. Take care.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Wow, what a fun conversation. You know what really stood out to me? His reminder that in business, there will always be unexpected challenges. It's not about if they will come, but how we prepare for them. I loved his point about the metaphors we use. Think about it. Are you approaching your business from a place of abundance or scarcity? It's a simple question that could completely change your decisions and your direction. For those of you building your own businesses, Robert shows us that purpose and profit can always go hand in hand. You don't have to choose between doing good and doing well. Hey, if you found value in today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a quick review. Those reviews help other business owners find these conversations when they need them most. And if you're feeling stuck, growing or scaling your business right now, I'd love to help. Book an intro meeting with me through the link in the show notes, and let's talk about applying some of these principles to your specific situation. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another great conversation on Think Business with Tyler.